Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into something absolutely fascinating: system science and the scientific enterprise. So, think about this for a second. How do we actually solve massive, interconnected global problems when our scientific knowledge is just trapped in these isolated little boxes? I mean, over centuries, humanity has built up this incredible enterprise of knowledge, right? But we've kind of done it by carving reality up into tiny, highly specialized pieces. And look, while that specialization has driven huge progress, it's also created a massive bottleneck when we try to solve modern problems that flat out refuse to stay neatly inside those boxes.
Just think about physics and biology for a minute. Traditional sciences are naturally specialized, which makes total sense. Physics does a brilliant job mapping out the fundamental rules of matter and energy. Biology gives us these incredible, deep insights into the complex mechanics of living systems. And then you have the social sciences decoding human behavior. Each of these fields develops incredibly effective theories. But here's the rub. Those insights almost always stay completely isolated within their specific domains. You could have a brilliant biologist and a brilliant physicist sitting right next to each other in the faculty lounge, and honestly, they might as well be speaking entirely different languages.
But here is the catch. Reality literally does not care about our academic boundaries, not even a little bit. Modern challenges demand a much wider lens. You can't just understand a climate crisis through physics alone, because it involves ecology, human behavior, global economics, the whole shebang. Or think about a global supply chain failure. One single stuck cargo ship can trigger a sudden shortage of computer chips on the exact opposite side of the planet. These systems are nonlinear, they're constantly adapting, and we simply cannot solve them if our knowledge stays locked away in separate academic vaults. Okay, so let's introduce the master key here: system science. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't just another narrow subject to squeeze into a university catalog. No, it is a powerful new lens that actually bridges these fragmented disciplines. It focuses on the general principles of organization, interaction, and behavior that recur across all sorts of systems. System science doesn't care if the system is made of atoms or biological cells or human beings. It just cares about how that system is organized and how it behaves. I actually challenge you to look out at the world and try to spot these recurring systemic patterns, because they're everywhere once you know what to look for. Take a feedback loop, for example. You can find a regulatory feedback loop inside a microscopic biological cell, sure, but you can find that exact same kind of massive feedback loop driving the boom and bust cycles in a global economy. Or take the concept of emergence, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Emergence happens when a tiny colony of ants builds a complex living bridge, and it also happens when millions of individual human traders suddenly crash a stock market. These underlying concepts, they are completely universal. And that brings us to a really crucial point. System science identifies what we call isomorphies. Kind of a clunky word, I know, but it basically just means shared structural similarities across entirely different types of systems. By spotting an isomorphy, you can effortlessly transfer knowledge and solutions right across those traditional scientific boundaries. So, if an engineer understands the precise mathematics of how information flows through a telecommunications network, that exact same isomorphic principle can help a biologist figure out how a human nervous system transmits pain signals. It's essentially a universal translator for science. Because we have this universal translator, system science isn't just some dusty filing cabinet for organizing old facts. It's an incredibly generative field. It sparks new ideas. Think about this rapid timeline of conceptual explosions. Back in 1948, Wiener introduces cybernetics. Then fast forward just a bit to 1956, and Forrester's developing system dynamics. Jump to 1977, we get complexity science and self-organization from Nicholas and Prigogine, and boom, by 1980, Maturana and Varela give us autopoiesis, explaining how biological organization actually works. By focusing on universal patterns, system science has consistently triggered these massive, cascading theoretical breakthroughs decade after decade. Let's weigh these two incredible superpowers. On one hand, system science is an integrative field. It acts as the glue. It provides the conceptual bridges that connect fragmented knowledge across isolated disciplines, actually bringing us closer to a genuine unity of knowledge. But on the other hand, it's a generative field. Because it strips away all those domain-specific details, it reveals hidden relationships and discovers completely new theories about how systems form, adapt, and evolve. So it integrates the old and it generates the new. Now let's zoom out for a second, because we can actually view science itself as a deeply interconnected, complex system. Back in 1978, L.R. Tronchet noted that linkage propositions connect concepts across disciplines. Basically, system science aspires to be a science of sciences.
It's telling us that human knowledge isn't just a random pile of accumulated facts. It's a highly structured, relational network. Science is a system in and of itself, and system science is what helps make those hidden, underlying relationships explicit and intelligible. To really understand science as a system, let's walk through the cycle of inquiry. It starts with disciplines. Those are our domains of inquiry. They generate theories, which provide our conceptual structures. But theories need methods, right? The active processes of investigation, and those methods finally yield empirical findings. Then, and here is the systemic part, those findings feed right back into refining our disciplines and our theories. It is a totally dynamic, interacting cycle. Science isn't just some static thing. It's an evolving, living network of ideas that is constantly testing, adapting, and refining itself through this exact systemic loop. Okay, I want to pause here for a quick kind of mind-bending meta moment. We call it reflexivity. This basically means that systems science is itself subject to the exact same principles that it studies. Think about it. It consists of interacting components, it constantly adapts to new contexts, and it evolves by integrating new ideas. It is a self-organizing system. So the very science we use to study complex systems is, in fact, a complex system itself. Pretty wild, right? It's just a brilliant reminder of the recursive, looping nature of human knowledge. So we've established this grand theoretical framework, but now we have to ask the really pivotal question. How do we actually transition from just observing and understanding these systems to physically intervening in them? Because let's face it, understanding a complex, highly uncertain context, like a fragile global economy or a massive environmental crisis, that is only half the battle. We actually need to know how to fix them without accidentally making things 10 times worse. Well, the systems engineering body of knowledge, or SEBOK for short, provides a really satisfying, highly actionable roadmap for exactly this. It's a clear 3-step progression. Step 1 is understanding systems. That's system science, the foundational principles we've just been talking about. Step 2 is thinking systemically. This is systems thinking, where we take those principles and use them for reasoning and framing our problems. And then step 3 is applying in practice. That is systems engineering, where we actually design and implement the real-world solutions. It's basically the perfect bridge from pure theory to tangible reality. Now, it's really important to clarify a crucial difference here. System science gives us the fundamental understanding of how systems are structured and how they behave. But science alone doesn't actually tell us what to do about it. And that is exactly where systems thinking comes in. Systems thinking is the essential cognitive shift we have to make to take those scientific concepts and apply them to messy, chaotic, real-world situations. It's what helps us draw boundaries, explore different perspectives, frame our problems correctly, and actually guide our interventions out there in the real world. And just to remind you why this deeply, absolutely matters, think about our current societal challenges: environmental sustainability, global health systems, massive technological transformations, socioeconomic resilience. Listen, none of these are isolated problems. They are massive, completely intertwined, multi-level crises. Having an integrated, systemic perspective isn't just some fun academic luxury anymore. It is literally an absolute necessity for our survival. Systems thinking allows decision makers to anticipate those nasty, unintended consequences, map out complex feedback loops, and actually design interventions that heal the system rather than accidentally breaking it further. We've covered a ton of ground today, moving from isolated scientific boxes to universal patterns, and finally to real-world engineering. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As our world becomes undeniably more interconnected by the second, what complex challenge in your own life, your community, or your profession will you tackle by shifting your mindset to systems thinking? The master key is literally right there in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep looking for those connections.